Hello, everyone, and welcome to Unified Purpose. This is the show where we share compassionate tales of inspiring community spirit. Thank you so much for joining me today, Dr. Miller. Today, I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me here. I'm excited to be on.
Thank
Talk
you.
about the good news.
Yes, all about the good news. These shows brighten my day, so I think I selfishly appreciate them maybe even more than the guests because I just love to talk about anything that's helping people. So I appreciate you taking the time to brighten my day today.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself, anything that you think would be relevant for people that don't know about you or your organization, and let us know what led you to this point.
So my name is Dr. Lena Miller. I have a doctorate in psychology. I'm a psychologist. And I think I've taken a very unique path to this point as CEO of Urban Alchemy. I started this kind of journey when I was like 23 years old. Started an organization called Hunters Point Family, which is in the community where I grew up. And it was a youth-based or youth-focused community organization that covered at the beginning, the Harbor Road public housing community, and at the end, right before I left, all of the public housing communities within San Francisco's Bayview Hunters Point. Um, I went to get a doctorate, really in response to the level of trauma as a result of the violence. Hunters Point family in particular really worked with young people who were very kind of immersed in the violent community, not so much the kids who came home and did their home. We're using different language now, but high risk
Mhm.
back then. So anyway, so that kind of led into this field of trauma, but on the other end of that, and PTSD, because we were seeing so much of that. But I learned this beautiful thing along the way, and that is that the other side of the coin, if you survive trauma, is that you develop this really intense kind of grit, resilience, emotional intelligence, which is a superpower in and of itself. So, kind of by accident, sort of, I would say more. What's that word? When things kind of just happen. Anyway,
Coincidence? Serendipity?
serendipity. That's the word. By serendipity, we moved into the pit stops, and the pit stops were a public toilet, really focusing on the unhoused community. And this was at the time when San Francisco, all the headlines were about human feces in the street and people walking through that and so on and so forth. So they really needed a different approach. And so for me at the time, it was jobs for the young people. It wasn't the best jobs, but it was something. And then I became affiliated with the halfway house, particularly the people who had come back from life sentences. And this kind of all coalesced because, what I found was that um, the folks who had really experienced long-term sentences, particularly life sentences, had this exquisite sense of emotional intelligence. And that is, oftentimes it doesn't make sense to people until you break it down. Um, but when you're on a level 4 yard, right, you have guns pointing down at you, and any little thing you do can start off not just a fight for yourself, but everybody you're affiliated with, lockdowns, all that kind of stuff. You have to really pay attention, not only when there is a very real sense of danger, which can cost you your life, but also to rein in your emotions, because any conflict is way bigger. And so over time, right, it teaches people to really pay attention to all these very subtle, almost to the point of not even micro expressions and body movements, but but energy. And
Mm-hmm.
so this became a perfect marriage for the pit stops, because the pit stops were in these really the most hardest intersections. And what people found is that everywhere we were, it decreased the violence, the kind of crime, the sense of not being safe. And I was able to interpret that through that psychological lens. And so everything kept kind of built. I could go on forever. You asked me one question and I went on
No,
and
no,
on.
no, keep going. I love the story. No, we need to know. We need to know.
It's so much. But so so not only, so everybody started to notice this, because there was one, these pit stops were in downtown areas, particularly in front of City Hall, these other areas that folks who work for the city walk by every day, and were able to see this profound difference in, I would say, not only crime and that sort of thing, and cleanliness, but also in um the energy, right? You
Mhm.
could feel this sense of calm come over. And so people were like, well, can you guys do this cleaning in Tenderloin, which is very tricky? You're out there 4 o'clock in the morning, people are sleeping out there. Is this garbage? Is this treasure? Is it, all this other kind of stuff? It can be hairy. And so you really
Mhm.
got to know how to communicate with people, and you got to know how to move around and all that kind of stuff. And so it's a hard job for anybody. And
Yeah.
so they were like, "Can you do that?" And we were like, "Absolutely." And then another project came on, which was in the middle of Civic Center, and the Exploratorium and the city wanted to put these real big, these gigantic, massive exhibitions that were integrative and interactive, and they encourage people to communicate who are just walking past the area. And Civic Center has always been gritty, grimy, you name it. I'm a third generation San Franciscan and used to work for City Hall, so I can say it.
Mhm.
It was a mess. And so for the first time, so we agreed to take this on, but we also said, listen, if we just stand there and just kind of protect these installations, they were afraid that people were going to, either drug dealers were going to take them over, or people were going to defecate, pee on them, graffiti them, taking them apart. So they were saying, can you keep these uh, installations kind of safe? But our
Mhm.
concern was, we know, 90% of our workforce is just getting out of prison, after life sentences. We don't want to stand there and be like the muscle. That's a
Yeah.
bad look for us at all. We're already catch kind of heat for that, or suspicion. And so we really kind of came up with a strategy to engage. And that really stayed in our DNA. And it's like throughout all of these experiences and these different kind of jobs, we learn the nuances, right?
Mhm.
Of the most effective way to engage with people, the trauma that we were seeing on the street, how we had to marry those things, the kind of perceptions from people outside, the homeless advocates, all these different things. And I think what's unique about Urban Alchemy and why we've grown so much and so fast is because we are fascinated and so excited about this work. And I think we all approach it like scientists, or people, like the IT people who are developing the next AI. For us, social services is like that. For us, healing our people is like that. And transformation, right? We're true alchemists of the human spirit. And so
Yeah.
so we pay attention. And anyway, I'll be quiet. You got me going. See, I
No,
told you.
no, no, don't be quiet. You are the guest. This is the point. But I see
You
you
still
wanted to
got to
take up your
ask me questions. Let's
Yeah,
just
no, but I completely understand the lens in which you're looking at this, because um I see a similar problem in Philadelphia, which is where I live, and the fact that um I've worked with vulnerable individuals coming back into the workforce, as well as unhoused individuals, as well as former veterans, and there's so many. It feels like almost sometimes the world is giving up on them, and I think that sometimes they see that perspective, and to because of how much trauma that sometimes they've been burdened with, but to be able to move into a leadership role or be able to even start at a position that they thought that they could never achieve after having the experience that they had is truly empowering.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm being honest, the world has given up on them
Mm-hmm.
along 40 or 50 years ago. That's what
Mm-hmm.
I see. I just told you my background. I came from a youth development background. I wasn't one of these people who are in the homeless milieu and all stuck into politics. It was shocking to me.
Yeah.
And as a matter of
Mm-hmm.
fact, I truly believe it's one of the reasons our organization has taken so much of a beating, because we didn't come up through that milieu and those politics. We didn't understand them. It's so heavy and so deep. I was just coming at it from a point of view of a community. Is it okay to cuss on this podcast?
Yeah, 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 you're good. We're not here to get
A
monetized.
community that's been shitted on more than any community in the whole United States, having lived through
Mm-hmm.
the trauma of that, the Tenderloin being part of my history and my family's history. I got folks out there now, and just I know how to make this better. Okay, so it kind of took a weird route, but it's picking it up, because I remember we've been in the belly of the beast.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like, it's hard, but it's not as hard as what we've been dealing with. And everything is successful. We didn't ask anyone's permission. And
Mm-hmm.
what I'm trying to say is, I didn't I didn't come to the homelessness space with a particular lens of that has been in there. So what I see neglect and stagnation, and think, 50 years, it's a charitable model, what I call it. Be happy with what I give you. Beggars can't be choosers. And what I see all in every other, I'm sitting here in San Francisco with the DNA of all the technology that's being created, watching this stuff happen. I engage with these folks, right? The billionaires who start the companies, I have to engage with on a certain level because of philanthropy and press and all this other kind of stuff, and the workers on a day-to-day basis. So I can pick up the energy, right? And I see, like, there's so much energy and enthusiasm and all these things about AI and whatever IT is coming through, right? People are making a lot of money, so I get it.
But
But
where's the enthusiasm for helping
yeah,
people?
having
Mm-hmm.
just graduated, like, I know what the studies are saying, and this stuff is not rocket science to solve. We know how to solve it. It's like it's already there, but because there's no financial incentive or whatever, it's like we're not really trying. So we're doing all these things that I know as a psychologist work, and implementing them with the little pieces that we get that we can cobble together. And you see it just taking off and being super successful all around the country. And yes, we're all geniuses and we have a edge because of people's experiences, but also this information is out there for everybody. We could all be doing so much of a better job in helping people. We
Mm-hmm.
really can. So
Yeah, it's frustrating to see sometimes that there's a very clear solution to something that people just don't want to invest time and money into a lot of the time. And that's why it feels like the world has given up on so many issues, because it's if we just put time and money and effort into something that would be towards helping people rather than like as a whole, like it would be the world would be a better place. But unfortunately, that's not what happens in practice all the time. So it's wonderful when we have organizations like you that are doing exactly that, because there's not enough of that, especially in the world, but especially in the country.
this is true. Um, but I'm hoping the reason why you see I'm so passionate about it is that I'm hoping that I'll awaken something in people where they'll be like, that's right. Because how much money at a certain point, how much money or the power that, all these things that why people chase certain things, right? This is going to give me, I think some people are motivated by the possibilities of AI or whatever, some people get really into that. But I think a lot of people are chasing money and
Yeah.
power, right? And so it's like to me, when you realize that by being in tune with spirit and really being able to move and shape things on a bigger scale, right? So I'm not even talking about little stuff. I helped somebody today. I bought that man a meal and put a smile on his face. Oh, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the scale that we do. Like you realize like you have enough to live, and the power and the influence and the way that you feel, like you can't exchange that for money anyway, which tends to start removing you further and further from the human experience and making people feel this kind of sense of, you know, how valuable is my life? Am I doing anything important for the world? Things like that. I don't, sorry, the window's open. Can you hear that noise?
Yeah, a little bit, but it's not. I can still hear you, so don't worry about it.
I can close it. Hold on. What I'm trying to, the message I'm trying to get across is this: it is doable. There is gold mine, emerald mines, cobalt, whatever you want to. There's mines and mines and mines of this stuff that we are not even going into, of the capacity to transform the human condition that people are sleeping on, because they look at people and the level of distress and the level of pain and the level of disease, and they're like, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
And certain people want to say, you just don't want to see homeless people, or and it's that too, of course. But there's another thing with humans witnessing, being in the presence of human suffering, that is, it's like an emotional weather, and you feel it. You're not immune from it, and especially if you feel like you can't do anything or you don't know how to, it just sinks people, it's a
Yeah.
heaviness in their spirit. And so it's like really opening up to say that, to put on people's mind, as somebody who has achieved tremendous success very quickly, to be able to say to people, no, I've been out into the front lines all over this country. We can do this. I'm not saying all these people are going to be healed and wonderful and glowing in the light, but I am saying listen, we can do this so much better. And it's not just spending tons and goo gobs of government money, tax. It's with what we have, being more efficient and doing things differently.
Can you speak more about what you're doing currently? So, like, what kind of programs see this effect? Like, like you've been able to reduce crime in some areas by like
Yeah.
50%, which is incredible. And so many people say they want to see that, but maybe don't see how or the best way, or um, don't want to put the effort into it. I'd love to hear like um, what do you see?
So, okay, with the community-based public safety models, that's what they're called, right? So it's like, just to be clear, so there's a few kind of different models.
Mhm.
There's this what they call community violence intervention, which is kind of stuff dealing with gang ongoing, violence and stuff like that. That's not what we do.
Mhm.
What we deal with is, I would say, dysregulation on the streets, right? And so it's kind of downtown. It could be unhoused people. It could be just mentally ill people who do have housing but are out there. It could be somebody who is neither but is having a breakdown and just overwhelmed by whatever is going on. And so it's kind of to say, where you have these heavy concentrations of mental illness and people struggling, to have other kind of community people who can be patient with them, who can understand, who won't be afraid, who feel confident enough to handle it, to be able to take the time to spend with folks, so you don't have to call the police, so you don't have to escalate a situation. Because for a lot of folks, that triggers them more, right? That
Yes.
brings an anxiety versus somebody who has spent 30 years on a level 4 yard, right? And has had to spend time kind of anticipating who's the real threat, what could, who's moving how, what's really going to happen, all those kinds of things, who can look at a person and say, is this a person who is acting offensively as a defensive position, or is this a person who's a real threat? And if it's a real threat, we call the police. They know that too, right? And so, but if it's not, this is a conversation.
Yeah.
This is a conversation. This is an energy that you bring to a person that's, and you just, hey, how you doing today? Let me talk to you. Sometimes people have offered, it's been on the news, which people totally twisted. Uh,
Yeah.
I got a cigarette. Would you like one? And that's a cup of coffee. Can I get you some water? A meal? So all these things are about starting to bring it down, connect with people. What do you need right now? You know, um, so that's kind of the energy behind that. And then also, I think it's a presence, right? So this is uh, this is kind of the point that Dr. Forrest Stewart and from Stanford University, they came in and did a study, which is what you were referring to about the drop in crime. And he started noticing and naming what he was seeing. And it's like having a steady presence, right? Having a steady presence of a person you see every day, that everyone seems to know, that understands the flow, that's keeping an eye on the street. Um, is really a big part of the success of that. It creates kind of this web of people who know each other, and safety, and someone has got my back. And so he was telling me that came from an idea from Jane Jacobs, from a book in the 60s or something called the Rise and Fall of Great. Anyway, this is something that all these sociologists, city nerds, and so he was saying, this is what you're doing, right? And so that's kind of that's the idea behind it. And what you heard me say is that there's research to support not only this aspect, but you heard me talk about so many other aspects of emotional intelligence, and you can go down rabbit holes and all of those kinds of things. People who, if you look at the people we serve, some people say, oh, Urban Alchemy, you can't trust them. They hire criminals, sometimes even murderers. Okay, but just like the vaccine works, okay. So when you have people, not you have people who've gone through this process to really have to deal with what is the reality of taking another person's life, right? Most of these guys are in their early teens, early 20s when this has happened. So, the brain transforms, men are super impulsive, particularly young men. I'm not excusing any of it. I'm saying, as humanity, we know these things, right? And so you have decades in prison, and in order to get out, when you have a life sentence, you have to go before a board, which they're all in law enforcement, and they go through every single aspect of everything, and they're looking for things that you've done to improve yourself, your life, classes you've taken, on and on and on, and how you reason about your situation, that you take accountability. Anyway, so what I'm saying is, you've had men who've done so much work on themselves, right? And had to deal with the reality of what happens when you pop off, as opposed to learning how to like, life is real, okay? It's not a macho, he says this, I'm gonna do. No, okay, it's all real. So you have people and who've been negotiating for peace on the yard, and who had to learn how to maintain this state of peace and I am love on a level 4 yard, and looking at dying in prison. So you say, and then okay, here's the other part, who are trying to balance their internal scales. So for the wrong they've done, to say, I have harmed my community. I'm quoting people who have said this around me. I've done so much harm in my community that I have an obligation to give back, to save lives, to make things better, so you have someone who's intrinsically motivated in a way that the average Joe, when somebody tries to attack them, because they will, so this is, the work is hard, right? People are not saying, "Oh, kind sir, thank you for seeing me. Thank you for the piece of bread you've given me." And no, fuck you, motherfucker. And they try to come at you. We've had people stabbed in the face. 2 people have been stabbed in the face, from someone having, it gets real. And you got to keep coming day after day and be able to spit on you, call you names, all kinds of stuff. It goes down, and still be the peace in that. So that's not easy. Not everyone can do it. But as a society, we can recognize what's going on and create more opportunities for the people who are doing it and doing it very well, and stop, beating us up constantly in the press for being criminal. I mean, that's one way people can help, but anyway, I digress.
Yeah, no, because I love the not only seeing potential in individuals that have learned so much from being in the system, and the fact that they have this wonderful capability to be able to talk to other people that have gone through or might go through the same things that they have. Whereas a lot of times I think there's a lot of people, and it's lovely, anyone that can help is always lovely, but I think that a lot of times when someone who has never been in an experience similar to that, they have a really hard time not only coping with what they hear or what they see or what they experience, but also that the person that they might be trying to help might not be as receptive to them because they don't see them as like an equal or someone that has gone through something even close to what they've experienced. So it's an even better group of people to be able to do this kind of work, to be able to help, because it's relatable to the people they're helping.
Yeah, and it's so, yes, to a certain extent, but I don't want to get caught there and say it's all, will they allow themselves to be open to receive?
Yeah,
Do I trust
I
this
understand.
person? The other part of it is also, yes, that's one part of the equation. The other part of the equation is the person's energy. Do you feel them to trust to be open? Can they even meet you there where they're talking to you in a way that is not triggering to you? You feel that, so there's an art to that, right?
Yeah.
Just the way that you approach it. Does it feel overly formal, and or does it feel familiar and comfortable and safe? And so to even know how to get to that frequency is the experience, right? And so all these things, so it's hard for the average Joe, because if you're driven by, I just want to help somebody, I want to feel like I'm doing some good, and people treat you shitty all the time, or you have these, you may have a few good experiences, but it gets really hard and there's some really traumatic things happening, and you haven't really seen any truth, it can be like, okay, this is too much and it doesn't pay good anyway. So that's why I'm saying it's not easy work to do, but thank God we have this huge population around the country that nobody else wants to employ. And I'm not saying we employ everybody, okay? We do not. We do have value. We have a certain criteria, right? And we do vet people, and did they go, all of that. But even so, if you take out the group, that you still got hundreds of thousands, millions of people who have developed this skill at a sheer necessity and survival, right? And had these experiences that, and it's like, guess what? You got the lottery tickets now. You've kind of developed this skill. We give you training, we give you support, structure, constant feedback, all these things to really kind of take whatever basics, shine it up, and then make sure you're exercising it out in the community and monitoring, making sure it's right. We have a whole apparatus to do that for these people who would otherwise just be a drain on the system, their families who would be supporting them, more disappointment in the community, all these kinds of things, as opposed to coming back to the community in a way that that everybody knows you. You're the one that makes people feel safe. I feel, I have a job. I buy my own car. I'm paying my rent. I'm buying a house. All these things that make me feel like a contributing citizen, a part of, hopeful about the future. It's like it's a win 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 win.
Yeah.
So,
It gives it's an opportunity to be able to have maybe a more sustainable life coming back in, but also to be able to help in whatever way you can.
what Well, I'd say even more than that. Not whatever way you can. Like, we got a way you can help for sure.
Yeah.
Uh, and it requires, and you see, as when we train, we're constantly talking about, and our seven values: compassion, love, self-respect, integrity, like self-care, self-love, because and our name is Urban Alchemy. If you understand anything about alchemy, you understand that you can't play with these things. These are not
Yeah.
buzzwords. They're not just like, this is, if you want to walk through the fire and not get burned, there's a certain ethos that you have to hold on to, which is the ethos of righteousness, right? Like, if you you want things to go right with somebody, start with respect. Nobody responds to disrespect. No one, meet people in that soft gushy place, because if you mean right by a person, you know what I mean, it's all good anyway. You don't have to kind of come with all that ugliness,
Meet
you
them where they're
know
at, not with judgment or any kind of, preconceived notions, shame, anything like that.
and even if they are in a bad place and stuff, then that's when you bring in compassion, right?
Hmm.
And that's when you bring, it's like you constantly have to reinforce with the next wave and the next wave and the next wave, and this is hard to do. Most of us, somebody walk by us and spit in our face just because they're having a bad day, we're gonna not
It's
be
hard to
compassionate.
Yeah, it's hard to meet someone that may appear combative or is combative with compassion. But it's something that, especially like the practitioners that you have, are like they have faced before, so it's like something that might come more naturally to them than someone else.
It's a muscle. It's a muscle that they exercise because they have a motivation to do so, a very strong motivation to do so. So I say it like that to say we can all do these things, right? But it's, most people, why would you? It's uncomfortable. It takes a lot of time. You got to go through a lot of mental stuff. You're going to go through trauma to get to the point, where you're skilled and can shift like that, can always turn it on, can, your neutral is compassion, love, all
Hmm.
these things. Like, it's rough, but being in prison for decades, that's another kind of mental, solitary confinement. Louis Hammonds, who's the, one of the creators of our community-based public safety, did 13 years in solitary confinement. And you talk to him, you like, that guy, uh people from City Hall and different places, they would say, oh, I met one of your guys at the pit stop by City Hall, such as, he's so wonderful, he did time. I'm like, yeah, 30 something years. No, he's such a nice, it's like, but the beautiful thing is, they came out to have this beautiful spirit and be good people, and show up consistently day after day. So, it's not a facade. Like,
Yeah,
it's
it's
really,
possible.
yeah. And so, how else do you recreate that?
Hmm.
You can't. And so, I'm saying we got this huge resource in this country that's primed to do this work,
Hmm.
right? And so, great. Everybody else doesn't have to, but don't be a hindrance either, right?
Don't keep it from happening. What is the harm? Like, I mean, if the crime is happening anyway, why not put efforts that are like towards it, that prove that it can be better? I mean, like, that I don't it, it may it's almost a no-brainer. Why would someone detest that or disagree with it?
Because would you really you want a real answer, or you just kind of putting it out
Oh,
there?
I know. I know
Yeah, I'm
exactly what
like,
you're gonna say,
don't
but
get me started. I just think people are, it's the idea is scary. And then we've
yeah,
grown so fast and all those things. And it's like, wait a minute, they have criminals. How could that be? I think it creates a what is that? That there's a term for it. I'm sorry, I'm moving a little slow today. Uh,
don't.
Cognitive dissonance. It creates
Yeah, mhm.
cognitive dissonance for people. And I think they keep pushing against all the things that they think why it doesn't make sense that we're successful, which is why I'm so grateful that you had me on the podcast to be able to explain to people, because I find that when I break down for people how and why it works, they're like, oh, that's genius. And it's
Yeah.
like,
It
right.
is. So they'll be
So
able to see that when they watch this episode for sure, because I think that I definitely have. I I want to end on, I think all of this was honestly positive, but I want to end on a very positive note. So what I want to ask you is, what do you hope to see for the future, whether for your organization or in general?
what I want, what I hope to see in the future is a revolution with all the hype and all the resources and all the other stuff like we've seen for AI be put into social services or social infrastructure. I can tell you, as someone who has been there in the trenches, meaning in graduate school at a doctoral level in psychology, we know how to fix all this shit. Okay?
There's evidence, there's proof.
You know, the best practices, and then we do it, we're doing it, and you see what it's happening. So it's not like I'm just saying shit, right, and trying to sell you colloidal oil or whatever. Like, no, I got evidence. I invited Stanford in my house. Go crazy, see what you want. The government is all inside and out. Like, this is real. This is not hocus pocus,
Mhm.
based on real best practices that are out there. And we're just scratching the surface because we're working with like 1% philanthropy. So when I say we're pulling together scraps to make to do these extras that we've been able to do. So imagine if the other universities started getting into randomized control studies, what works, what doesn't, in treatment. And right now, jails used to be the number one mental health facility in the country. I believe today it's homeless shelters. No one's acknowledging it though, but we're required to do this work. So let's really do this work. Let's figure out if people ever recover from fentanyl. Because if not, we're going to have to change the way our shelters and treatment and all that look. Maybe we have to change the way we're doing homeless shelters and that kind of thing. I mean, there's so much that needs to be done, that can be done, that we have precedent to show it works. And what I would love to see is just all the energy and enthusiasm and all that stuff put into this work, not only because it brings people satisfaction, but if you look at how much the billions of dollars that have been poured into emergency services, shelter, homelessness, police, all of that to deal with the dis-ease of this problem, if you started to slowly shift that over to put into the maintenance, right, of the healing of that. So I'm not even saying add 20 gazillion extra dollars to the budget. I'm just saying, let's just slowly start to shift that. There's money in it. Maybe not as much as AI, but enough that you can live a good life.
Yeah.
You know? So that's what I'd like to see. For Urban Alchemy, I want to see us or a franchise. We're looking at franchise models in every major city in America, like getting the right people to work, trying and implementing new models. partnering with the university, academic community to continuously study, to figure out what's best practices, implement those best practices, tweak them, get them better. Like, listen, I'm going for it. Anybody else wants to come, they can come on. But I'm excited and we are going for it. And so I'm excited about the future because I know that it can be done. And I feel like as long as we pull with the momentum, we're gonna people are gonna come along, and eventually it's gonna go this way, and it's gonna push us. So that's the good news. Remember, I started out, I said I came to bring the good news today.
Yeah, and you did. No, that was like a beautiful ending to this podcast of being forward looking, because I hearing from this and doing the research on your organization, I think this is incredible work, and I'm so happy that you were able to share this story on our podcast so that more people can understand it better, because I completely understand what you're saying is like this fear kind of gets in the way of people supporting really important causes. And to be able to understand it fully with your explanation today, I think I hope that that changes things.
Me too. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Dr. Miller. This was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All
And
right.
thank you, everyone listening. Have a lovely day and get to check out Urban Alchemy in the description. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching.
Thank you.